Nobody can live your life for you. But what socialism tries to do, is live my life for me. Now, the consequence of that is destruction. The consequence of that is starvation. The consequence of that is death. Even if you exclude the violent death of the gulags, just the starvation of Ukraine, the starvation in Mao's China, the starvation in Venezuela today, or just the poverty of truly social democratic countries, like I was just reading today, like Argentina or Greece, heading in that direction, relatively poor already, or any country that actually practice social democracy, democratic socialism, becomes poor. Maybe they don't starve because they haven't gone all the way, but they become poor. They become poor because they've extracted individual decision-making, and they limited the individual decision-making. How did they limit it? Through two mechanisms. They limit individual decision-making. One is by stealing our money, reducing the amount of capital available to us, reducing the amount of funds available to us to both consume, invest, produce, so that we can do less with our life because we have less capital to do it with, less money to do it with, whether it's on the consumption side or, more importantly, I would say, on the production side. And secondly, by regulating and controlling. And therefore, again, limiting our options, telling us what we can and cannot do. Take healthcare. Take healthcare. Socialized healthcare, on the one hand, makes us poorer by taxing us huge amounts. And secondly, limits our choices in terms of what is available to us, in terms of treatments, which doctor. It takes away our mind. You cannot now actually choose which doctor to see. You see the doctor that's assigned to you. You see the doctor that's available. It takes away your judgment about your health care. But it's worse than that, because it takes away the doctor's judgment about what health care to give you. He is now constrained by what the government approves, by the list of treatments for your disease approved. Today, much of it is called evidence-based medicine. Now, that sounds great. We all want evidence-based medicine. But really what evidence-based medicine is, a list of pre-approved techniques, treatments, procedures that the doctor should choose from. And anything outside of this is not going to be covered. But where do you get the innovation? Where do you get the geniuses who are going to do something new and do something different? Right? About 2 years ago, I've had a lot of back problems throughout my life. I had my first back surgery when I was 19, massive surgery. I'd lost basically feeling in my leg below my knee. And I was 19 years old, which is pathetic and ridiculous. But it's what happens. I had massive surgery, cut me open. I had 2 massively ruptured discs. They had to clean that all up. They sewed me back on. And since then, I've had back problems nonstop. And at some point, I literally had to have two of my vertebrae fused because one of my discs just fell apart and was non-existent. And then a couple of years ago, I was having back pain again. And it was pretty serious, and I couldn't sleep. And if you watch some of my talks from that period, I'm kind of always uncomfortable because my back is killing me and it's really hurting. But I did not want fusion because, once you start fusion, you fuse 2 vertebrates, you put pressure on the next disc and vertebrate, and then you fuse that, and then it goes like this. And by the time you're 70 years old, you've got 1 fused back. And that's not what I want. So I said to my doctor, look, I don't want fusion, but I've read that maybe what we can do is, how about you go in there, clean it up, take the stuff that's sticking out and pressing on my nerves away, but the disc is gone. He said, there's no disc there. We have to do something. And I said, how about we inject stem cells? And it's the doctor I really love. I really like this guy. And he said, I've never done that, but there's no medical proof. It's not on the list of evidence-based medicine. I said, And I said, in other countries, they're trying this, and I've read about this, and yeah, it's unclear how successful it is, but you know what? I'm willing to pay the money, even though insurance probably won't cover all of it. They'll cover the part that cleans it up. They won't cover the stem cell part. I'll pay cash because I don't want fusion, and I want to experiment. And the reason, by the way, the insurance won't cover it is because the government hasn't approved it. It's not on that list that the government approves. And he said, I need to look into it, the FDA, da-da-dum, right? Because the FDA, so we have to figure out which stem cells we can use. Because the FDA approves some stem cells, my stem cells, from my body. We can't use fat stem cells because the government doesn't like those. We can't use this. Maybe we can use bone marrow stem cells. So we did. We landed up, going into my bone marrow, sucking out some bone marrow, spinning it, separating out the stem cells, going in there with arthroscopic surgery, which is amazing, right? Cleaning it all up, then going in and injecting stem cells between my two vertebrae. And, a year later, we did an MRI. And there was what looked like a healthy disc between my vertebrae, when none existed before. It worked. I'm mostly, I'll never, ever be pain-free on my back because my back's messed up from when I was 19. But I'm mostly pain-free. Certainly, I'm 1,000 times better than I was before the surgery. And the stem cells looked like they worked. I just did another MRI at the 2-year anniversary of this, or about a year and a half, and looked at it again, and wow, there it is. The disc is healthy. It's all lit up. Now, you could never do that in socialist medicine. He would only be able to do what the government has approved to pay him for. He couldn't just experiment, which is what he did with me. I approved it. We got the company that produces the machine that spins the stem cells. They brought it down that day. There was a whole number of people in the operating room because everybody wanted to see this because it's pretty rare, at least in Southern California, to do this. In Europe, it's more common to do this. And, they did it. And I paid cash. And yeah, I can afford to pay cash. Yeah, I'm not going to sacrifice the fact that I've worked hard and I can afford to pay. It didn't cost a fortune. It was I think it was $5,000 out of pocket. And it was an outpatient treatment. I walked out of there that afternoon, went home. It was amazing. Somebody asked if my back injury was military related. It certainly happened in the military. So I had the surgery during my military service, and it affected my military service. It's why I landed up in military intelligence in Israel. It's because my medical profile, I couldn't be combat soldier anymore, so I landed up in military intelligence. Anyway, this is freedom. This is the ability for me to do research, make choices, decide about a treatment. It's the ability of the doctor to make a decision, a choice, about whether he wants to do it or not. He could have said, you're crazy. I don't want to do this. And then I could have shopped it around, gone to other doctors, or I could have given up on it, but it would have been my judgment. Freedom is about individual judgment. Freedom is about individual decision-making. Freedom is about individuals using their reason in pursuit of their life. And what socialism does is it pulls the rug from them. It takes that away from you. And by doing that, it destroys whatever industry it's done it to. So if you look at medicine, you can't do that in the UK. Not at the NHS, maybe in a private hospital, maybe. You can't do that in systems where the government pays the doctor. Now, a lot of these systems, to compensate for that, have a dual system that allows some people, the very rich, not even the middle class anymore, only the very rich, to be able to go to private doctors. But it takes away that choice from many people. I mean, $5,000 not to have fusion on your back is worth it for, I think, a lot of people who are not as wealthy as I am. And I'm not super wealthy, but I'm wealthy. I've done well. And what is the reason why I should give up this ability to go to the doctor of my choice, to have the treatment of their choice, to try something new with my own money. I'm not asking you to fund my experimentation. I did it. I'm not even asking my insurance company to fund the experiment. Maybe they, for completely rational reasons, say, you know what? We're not covering this because we don't believe in it. But, you know, they cover acupuncture. They cover all kinds of, crap as treatment. But they won't cover, you know, this, right? But that's absolutely their right to do so. But why should I give up that ability? Why should the insurance company give up the ability to make choices about what it would cover or not? And why should the doctor give up his ability to make choices about what treatment to give me or not? Because there's 10% of the population that are uninsured. There's a few people over there who are suffering because they don't have health care. It's because you must sacrifice, Yaron. You must sacrifice your mind. You must sacrifice your judgment. You must sacrifice your wealth. You must sacrifice everything in the name of the 10% who are uninsured. In the name of those people who might not have the same access as you do. You are nothing, Yaron. You are just a slave, a pawn. You are a meaningless individual. To be used, to be sacrificed, to be exploited by those who need. And it turns out those who need are everybody who happens to be less wealthy than me. So you can see how the immorality and the impracticality, you know, feed off of each other, and they're the same thing in the end. Altruism is impractical, therefore, and altruism is immoral. Socialized healthcare is immoral, and it's also impractical. It leads to bad outcomes for almost all of us. And at the core of it is this idea. The core of it are two fundamentals: altruism and the negation, which two ideas that go hand in hand, of course, and the negation of you as an autonomous thinker, choosing your own values, making your own decision. And the replacement of that with fill in the blank, the workers, the democracy, the state, the bureaucrat, the expert. Central planning is bad because central planning replaces my decision with somebody else's. Right? So, socialism is both immoral and impractical. Shouldn't be surprising.
When you say that society has no responsibility here, I think individuals have a responsibility to themselves. Is that it?
I don't like the word responsibility involved here.
All right, well, what should we say then? Help me. Do what I wish to do. Is that your point? That the more...
No. Do what I rationally think is right, according to the right morality. And help others if you can, but not as a primary obligation. And now, in regard to society, there is no such thing as society, you know. It's all of us. Now, how can we have obligations which we didn't undertake? See, the parents of a child would have obligations for him up to a certain age, since they brought him into the world, but they can't do what is impossible to them. So it doesn't mean that they can at any moment throw the burden on the rest of us. We're society, everybody's society, and we can't have unearned obligations and unchosen obligations.
What in the Ayn Rand civil context would be appropriate societal measures to accommodate the ungifted?
Their own parents, and a chance to give their parents to earn money. If, however, their parents are poor and cannot assume it, it's a big, heavy burden, then you can appeal to private charity, as it was always done before welfare statism in this country.
You want private charity as well for the gifted?
If necessary. They usually, in a free society, they won't need it. They'll make their own way, just so you don't stop them. But Private charity cannot be done by means of tax collection, which means by force. Private charity is up to you, and if it's a worthy cause, that is, let's say, a subnormal child who certainly cannot help it, it's perfectly all right to help him, but not at the sacrifice of your own child.
You probably like to get rid of HEW then.
Oh, certainly. Almost certainly. Much more than that. I'd like to get rid of
A lot of the government, huh?
everything except the basic duties of the government, which is police, law courts, armed forces.
You want less government. All right.
Thank you.
Well, everybody says that. It's a little hard to put that into effect when we've got a country that has such a maldistribution of wealth. You'll give me that, huh? Too few rich, too many poor.
I will give you part of that, because if there is a maldistribution, it's to those who have political pull. If some of your money is made with government help and government favoritism, then I grant you that is unfair and improper and unjust. But if you made it yourself, in free competition, enough people want to pay you for your services or your product, then you should keep all of it. Why shouldn't you? You made it.
All right. Okay. You also think if the Middle Eastern countries want to hold us up for the oil at $5 a barrel, or a gallon, excuse me, $5, will that day ever be back? They ought to be able to do it. It's their oil. Is that your point?
No. My point is we should not have permitted altruistically to all those nations to nationalize what we built for them. They took... We are now moving towards complete collectivism or socialism, a system under which everybody is enslaved to everybody. And we are moving that way only because of our altruist morality.
Yes, but you say everybody is enslaved to everybody, yet this came about democratically, and free people in a free country voted for this kind of government, wanted this kind of legislation. Do you object to the democratic process?
I object to the idea that people have the right to vote on everything. The traditional American system was a system based on the idea that majority will prevailed only in public or political affairs, and that it was limited by inalienable individual rights. Therefore, I do not believe that a majority can vote a man's life or property or freedom away from him. Therefore, I do not believe that if a majority votes on any issue, that this makes the issue right. It doesn't.
All right, then how do we arrive at action? How should we arrive at action?
By voluntary consent, voluntary cooperation of free men, unforced officials. The powers of government are strictly limited. They will have no right to initiate force or compulsion against any citizen except a criminal. Those who have initiated force will be punished by force, and that is the only proper function of government. What we would not permit is the government to initiate force against people who have hurt no one, who have not forced anyone. We would not give the government or the majority or any minority the right to take the life or the property of others. That was the original American system.
When you say take the property of others, I imagine that you're talking now about taxes.
Yes, I am.
And you believe that there should be no right by the government to tax. You believe that there should be no such thing as welfare legislation, unemployment compensation, regulation during times of stress, certain kinds of rent controls and things like that.
That's right. I'm opposed to all forms of control. I am for an absolute, laissez-faire, free, unregulated economy. Let me put it briefly. I'm for the separation of state and economics, just as we had separation of state and church, which led to peaceful coexistence among different religions after a period of religious wars. So the same applies to economics. If you separate the government from economics, if you do not regulate production and trade, you will have peaceful cooperation and harmony and justice among men.